Hey guys, this is Alan, and today's topic is about frost protection. Protecting your plants during the winter, it's going to be one of the most important parts of actually growing tropical plants in areas where it gets cold during the winter. Now, there's a difference between frost protection and cold protection. Frost protection is going to be a lot easier to do than cold protection because all you're trying to do is to prevent your plant from getting wet in the winter. The water is what freezes on your plant, and the ice on the foliage of your plant is what will actually damage it. There are two different categories for frost protection. The first one is going to be light frost, and the second is going to be hard frost protection. There's so many different ways to actually protect your plant from frost that it's really not that complicated depending on the type of plant that you have. So let's say that you're growing a tropical plant right now, and you're not sure if you need to give it frost protection or cold protection. Well, you need to find that out because it's very important, because frost protection will not protect your plants that are cold sensitive. Because even if you protect your plant from the frost and your plant happens to be cold sensitive, it will still take damage. So keep that in mind when protecting your plants. If you're not sure, do some research. Most likely, if you're growing a tropical plant or a subtropical plant that doesn't like the cold temperatures, the minimum it will be is frost sensitive. Now, types of frost protections. The first one is you want to cover your plant. So let's actually talk about light frost protection. This tree right here, it's a jamon, also known as a Java plum. It's actually very easy to grow in my area. It takes the sun, it grows very quickly, and the only thing that it needs is frost protection. This plant right here is hard frost sensitive. What that means is it will take light frost briefly without taking any damage. But as soon as the ice starts building up on the plant, it will start taking damage from the frost. The differences between light frost protection and hard frost protection are this. Light frost is going to be the powdery snow that you see on the ground early morning or you see on your plants. It's not actually going to be ice. That is light frost, and usually light frost only lasts for a few hours. It could be 1 through maybe 3-4 hours, and it's very mild, and it usually as soon as the sun comes up, it's gone. Hard frost, on the other hand, is actually ice on your plant. It starts the same way, but usually the temperatures are going to be a lot colder, and they are going to last a lot longer to allow the actual frost or light frost to turn into solid ice. So if you're not sure, guys, because we don't know the weather, we cannot predict it, but if you have a forecast, I would say of in the 20s, mid 20s, or even lower than that, you know for sure you are going to get hard frost. Light frost is only going to happen in the low 30s to high 20s very briefly. So if your temperatures are, say, let's say 35 degrees expected tonight, depending on your microclimate, you may be a little colder or a little bit warmer. If you're not sure, just protect your plant to be safe. So let's go ahead and protect this plant from hard frost. Like I said, hard frost is going to be ice on the plant itself. So the easiest way to do this is you need to understand what frost is actually. So frost is going to be water. Water in the air in its vapor form. We call that humidity. Usually in the winter, when the temperatures drop, that vapor will turn into liquid and fall to the ground just like rain and get your plant wet in the process. The water itself is not so much the issue, it's going to be the temperatures. If they keep on dropping, that water on your plant will actually freeze, and that is what creates frost. So the main goal during frost protection is going to be to actually cover your plant completely, so that way your plant doesn't get wet in the winter. You want to prevent your plant from getting wet in the winter, and that is exactly how you're going to frost protect your plant. Now, what kind of material to use? You can use anything, guys. Anything that will actually prevent your plant from getting wet. So let's say you're watching me right now. It's late at night. You have a forecast of lower than 30 degrees and you're panicking because you have no idea how to protect your plant and you're waiting until the last minute to actually be proactive. I've done it myself, and this is how I learned a lot about pretty much everything that has to do with all my plants. So the first thing you need to do is you're gonna go outside and you're gonna find any type of material that you have. Don't even worry about what you have. And then You're gonna get it out, and then you're just gonna throw it on your plant. Just like this. This is the worst case scenario, guys. This is the last minute, and this is the minimum you can do to your plant. Now, what you want to do is you want to secure this to the ground, to the plant itself, or I mean, whatever way, so that way it doesn't actually blow away in the middle of the night. Because if this blows away in the middle of the night, guess what's going to happen? Your plant's going to get wet, the water's going to freeze on your plant, and all your efforts are going to be wasted. So the material that I'm using right now, this is frost cloth. The reason I like it is because it comes in, the way I buy it, it comes in huge rolls, and since I have so many plants to protect in the winter, it's a lot cheaper for me to buy a full 1,000-foot long roll than it is just to buy individual packages at the store. If you only have one plant, you can find this anywhere. Any box store has it, maybe a Walmart. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it anywhere, guys. If you only have one plant, all you gotta make sure is that you make sure that it's actually bigger than the plant that you're trying to protect, obviously. Now, what I see done all the time is a lot of people get their material. You can use sheets, you can use whatever you want, and they just put it on top of the plant just like this. That is fine, guys, and especially if you don't have any wind coming up at night when you're expecting frost. But what happens usually if you have any kind of wind? Have you ever been outside when it's raining and windy? The rain will come in sideways. The same thing's gonna happen with your plant. The frost will come in sideways too. So you wanna make sure you cover the sides too, because if you only cover the top, what if the water comes in through the sides and then your plant's still gonna get frost damage? So that's the main reason when frost protecting your plants, you wanna make sure you cover the whole thing all the way down to the bottom, just like this. Now, let's say you have a little more time, maybe a few hours before you actually get frost and you didn't wait until the last minute. At that point, you wanna be a little more proactive and do a little better job than just throwing it over. So that's what we're gonna do right now, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this plant right here completely all the way down to the bottom, so that way I don't have to worry about it for the rest of the winter. So let me go ahead and do that right now. So the way I do this is you get yourself some frost cloth. You can get a sheet, you can get blankets, anything works. But you have to remember, guys, you're trying to prevent your plant from getting wet. So what happens if it rains and then you have a sheet over your plant? That sheet is actually gonna get wet and then it's gonna freeze right against your plant. So this is the main reason why I like to use frost cloth, because it actually repels the water somewhat, not completely. So if you get light rain right before it freezes, a lot of the water is just gonna sheet off the side of the frost cloth and not get your plant wet, and the material itself is not gonna get wet as well. That's the main reason why I like this, besides being a lot cheaper than using any other materials. And then you can buy in bulk, especially if you have a lot of plants to cover. So let me go ahead and protect this plant right now, and then I can walk you through exactly what I do. Get your piece of frost cloth or sheets or whatever you have, and then just drape your plant all the way around. Now, what you want to do is make sure that the actual material covers the plant all the way down. Sometimes you're gonna have branches sticking out like this. At that point, you have two choices. You can either cut this off, or since I don't want to cut it, because I want my plant to be a little more bushy than a tree-like, so that way I can get a lot more fruit, I'm just gonna get some twine like this. You can use ropes, you can use whatever you want, and I'm gonna tie it towards the middle, which is the main trunk. So you're just gonna grab it like this. It doesn't have to be complicated, just tie it, and then you want to bring it to the main trunk to lift it off the ground, so that way it will be actually protected instead of sticking out the structure on the sides. And you're gonna do that with pretty much all the branches that you don't want to cut out. So I only got 2 branches out here, actually 3 branches that are sticking out that I'm just gonna go ahead and tighten up. And I'll show you in just a minute what it looks like. All right, so if you want to come over here and you can actually see, I got my branches secured to the middle trunk so that way they're not sticking out the sides. And when I cover the whole plant, they're not gonna be sticking out, and I don't have to actually cut a bigger piece of material just to cover 2 or 3 branches. A lot of people just cut them off. I don't want to cut them off. I'd rather do that instead, but it's personal choice at that point, so don't really emphasize too much on that. Don't worry about it. The main thing we're doing right now, we're just protecting our plant. All right, so you're gonna cover your plant. Make sure that it's completely covering all the branches, all the leaves. And then what I like to use these clamps right here. You can buy this in bundles of I think 20 or 25 pieces at the box stores, and I think it's like maybe $10–15. I reuse these guys every single year. Obviously sometimes they break, but you know what, it happens with everything, so don't worry too much about it, and try to save your material so that way you can reuse it every single year. Growing tropical plants is not gonna be cheap, guys. I'm not trying to tell you what's the cheapest way to frost protect your plant. I'm trying to teach you actually what's the best way to actually protect your plants. I'm sure your tropical plants were not cheap, and you're actually trying to do the best you can to keep your plants, you know, alive during the winter. And if you can save your materials and reusing every single year, that will be the best thing you can do, instead of having to rebuy everything every single year. Because I can tell you, if you have more than a few plants, it's going to get expensive. So what I like to do, I like to wrap the plant all the way around, all the way down to the ground, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. You want to make sure you close everything off. You don't want any wind to get inside this little cover right here, because any amount of wind that gets inside will actually damage your plant, and then all the work that you put in protecting your plant is gonna go down the drain. All right, so wrap the whole thing all the way down to the ground, and then you want to clip it in place. Make sure that the wind won't be able to get inside that little structure, because what's going to happen is any amount of wind inside the structure, the water will get in there, and then this will come open and blow away in the middle of the night, especially if you get strong winds in your area during the winter. Now remember, this is hard frost protection. Why do I call it that? Because this plant right here will be able to tolerate light frost briefly. And usually the negative aspect of actually doing this, it's going to be this. Sometimes when it gets really cold, a lot of the frost, a lot of the water will actually get on the top, and it will freeze before it even goes down to the ground. So a lot of the ice is going to build up on top of this little cover right here. And if I don't know if you ever experienced it before or not, but that ice, the cold, will transfer through the material. And whatever that's touching your plant right here, it will get cold, and it will still take a frost damage, because it's gonna get too cold, just like if the ice was actually touching your plant, despite having this cover on top of your plant. So this technique right here only works on plants that are not that frost sensitive, because even if the cold gets through the material, your plant is not that sensitive to the point that will actually take damage. So remember, this technique will only work with plants that are not that frost sensitive or in areas where you only get mild frost briefly. What's briefly, guys? I'm talking about a few hours. 1, 2, 3, 4 hours tops. Anything longer than that, the water will freeze into solid ice, and at that point, it's a completely different game. So, this is my jammer right here, frost protected for the whole winter. So, let's see. One of the most frequently asked questions that I get is, do I need to open this up during daytime to let the sun through so the plant can grow? My answer is no, guys. You don't have to do anything. You see what I've done here? This will stay like this through the whole winter. I won't even touch the structure, besides maybe every once in a while I'm gonna come out here, look inside, see how the plant looks, and maybe give it some water so I can check the soil if it's dry or if it's moist so I can water it. I don't touch this for the whole winter. That's just too much work, especially when you have like 30, 40 plants to cover, and then, I mean, it becomes a full-time job just checking your plants. So I want to minimize how much effort or how much time I put into winter protection. So I just cover this one time right before the winter starts, and then I leave it like this for the whole winter. You don't have to open it. But what if the sun doesn't get to your plant? Then the plant's gonna die. It's not gonna grow. Guess what, guys? Your plant's not gonna grow anyways. In order for your plants to grow, you need two main ingredients, a lot more important than any fertilizer you can buy for your plant, and that is light and temperature. During the winter here in Arizona, we get light all the time. It's hot here during the daytime, but our night temperatures can drop as much as 50 degrees. The night temperatures are gonna be what dictate if your plant actually grows or it doesn't grow. So even though here in my area we're hot daytime throughout the whole winter, our night temperatures are actually cold, and that pretty much prevents most plants from actually growing. So this plant right here, even with all the light in the world, it's not going to grow during the winter. So I'm not really worried if it gets sun or not. The plant's not going to die, I promise you. I've been doing this for several years with a lot of my plants, and I have everything in the ground. I got mango trees, I have guava plants, I have longan, I got perfume trees, I got lychee trees, I got everything. And I do this with all of them, depending if they are frost sensitive or cold sensitive, and they all make it through the winter just fine. So if you want to minimize how much effort you put into it, cover your plant, clamp it together, make sure it's secure enough so it won't blow away in the middle of the night, and then you're good to go, guys. That's all you have to do for the whole winter. So every once in a while, just come over and check your plant, and that's pretty much all you need to do. Your plant's not going to die. The worst that's going to happen in this little cover right here is a lot of the heat is going to build up inside that little cover, so your plant's going to sweat a little more than another plant that's actually exposed to the open air. So it will drink a little more water than another plant, especially if you get hot during daytime. So usually I keep my cover like this all the way from beginning first week of December through, in my area, around mid-March. Sometimes I take it off earlier, especially if I look at the forecast and the forecast shows no signs of frost or low temperatures for the next few weeks, and then I just take it off for the season. But usually this thing right here stays all the way through March, and I don't open it during daytime. I don't do anything. It's done. This is a one-time deal. Now this is one type of frost protection, guys. So let's say that this plant right here was light frost sensitive. That means any amount of frost will actually damage your plant. Well, at that point, guys, you got two options. Option number one is building a little structure just like this one right here. This one's built out of wood. It's been here for a few years now. Initially in this area I had a mango tree many years ago, 4 years ago actually, and at the time I didn't understand the difference between frost protection and cold protection. So that mango tree died because it got cold damage, and I didn't know what happened. Later on I found out the differences and what actually caused that tree to die. So I built a structure right here the following year, but it was already too late. That tree took over a year to die. Anyways, you can build a little structure. It doesn't have to be this big. it has to be bigger than your tree, obviously, and wider than it. And instead of actually covering your plant like this, you're going to cover the whole structure. And that's going to prevent the actual ice from transferring the cold right against your plant. Another way you can bypass this structure is by double layering it. So I have more frost cloth right here. And let's say this plant, like I said, was light frost sensitive. Any amount of frost will damage it. So any amount of ice or transfer of cold through the cover will actually damage it. So what you can do is you can just layer it. Just throw several layers in there, wrap her around, and you're good to go. So let's say you're still worried about it. Maybe this is your first winter and you don't want to build a more labor intensive structure. You don't want to spend that much time. You can layer just like this, and then what you can do, you can find plastic, any plastic that you can find anywhere, and then you can just wrap the whole thing, and that will prevent for sure 100% the cold from transferring to your plant. And those are the ways that you can actually frost protect your plants. I'm gonna go and walk to the front right now, and I'm gonna show you a cold structure that we built here for one of the mango trees, which you can also use for frost protection. So let's go. Guys, so this is one of the first structures that we have. What we have inside is a Buddha belly bamboo. In my area, Buddha belly bamboo tends to take a lot more frost damage than other varieties of bamboo. In this area, as you can see, it's actually out here in the open, so we get a lot of frost. We get a lot of wind that comes from that area and just completely destroys this little Buddha belly bamboo that we have in the ground. So what we do in the winter is I put a few stakes in the ground. I don't know if we can actually see it or not. Anyways, so what I have stakes in the ground, 4, and then we just wrap the whole thing all the way around, and then we drape the frost cloth over the top too. So this is technically like a little cold structure. This keeps the frost away from the plant itself. Even if the ice builds up on top, it's not touching the plant, so you don't have the issue of the cold transferring through the material. And this is just another way of frost protecting your plant. Now let's say you have a bigger plant, like this one right here. This is my mango tree. This is a fruit punch mango. It's been in the ground for a little over 4 years. So this is another cold structure that we built. Now this one, it's mainly there not because it's frost sensitive, but it's because it's cold sensitive. So we have cold protection is going to be completely different. It's going to be a lot more work for you, but this is what we have to do for my mango tree in the ground. My mango tree here, it's about 10 feet tall, and we built a cold frame or cold structure. You can think of it as a greenhouse every single winter to protect it during the winter. But you know what? Let's say you have a bigger plant that you need to frost protect. This is another way you can actually do it. So let's recap, guys. Frost protection. If you're trying to protect your plants from frost, there's so many different ways of doing it. My recommendation is not to wait until the last minute, because the more time you actually have to think about it and prepare, the better your plants are going to be. So remember, if you're not sure if your plant is frost sensitive or not, you will need to fully protect it and treat it as a cold sensitive plant, which I'll have another video coming out in the future where I explain cold protection and the differences between cold protection and frost protection. It's going to be different, guys. So unless you know 100% that your plant is just frost sensitive, then you can go ahead and cover it. You can build a structure, you can do all kinds of stuff, and it doesn't really matter how it looks as long as you keep the plant from getting wet and the ice building on your plant. So that's about it, guys. Frost protection. And let me see what else I need to recap on. Alright, so how can you find out if your plant is actually frost sensitive or not? Well, you need to research, guys. Everything that I've learned, I pretty much learned the hard way by killing hundreds of plants. I'm not proud of it, but you know what? It taught me a lot, and I actually learned from my mistakes, so I don't make them again. But if you don't want to do the same thing I'm doing, just keep watching, and at least I can relay the information that I've learned to you, so you don't make the same mistakes. Some of the ways you can actually find out if your plant is frost sensitive or not are you can do the research. Go online, ask other people around your area. Don't ask them directly if their plants is frost sensitive or cold sensitive. Just ask them what temperature did it start taking damage, or when did it start taking damage. Was it right after the first freeze? And then just do a little homework, and then you make up your own conclusions out of that, because everybody has their own perspectives, and then a lot of people don't understand the differences between cold protection and frost protection. Another way you can find out is by trial and error, guys. So let's say you built a structure, and then you do everything perfect, and then your plant still takes damage in the winter. Guess what happened, guys? At that point, your plant was cold sensitive, and you were just protecting it from the frost. So obviously, you needed to protect your plant from the cold as well, which is completely different. So at that point, you learned the hard way, but you know what? You're learning at least. Or you can comment below, guys. You can ask if it's something that I'm growing or I have knowledge on. I can tell you if it's frost sensitive or not. Now, I can tell you this for sure. If you drop in the teens, I'm talking about 19, 18, 17 degrees, or even single digits, guys, every single plant that you have that is tropical will be cold sensitive. Frost protection is going to be mainly for in between areas. My zone here is 9B, but my microclimate here in my area is usually about 10 degrees colder than the forecast. So sometimes we get colder, sometimes we're a little warmer. And usually, a lot of the plants that are frost sensitive, most of the ones that I have here that I know for sure, I have been able to test them all the way down to 19 degrees. 19 degrees, those plants will take the ambient temperature as long as I protect them from the cold wind and the frost. I almost forgot. Another way you can protect your plants naturally from frost is going to be by using natural microclimates. If you're looking here, you can see how shaded that area and how sheltered it is. In the summer, this area here it's cooler because it's very shaded. But guess what happens in the winter? The canopies of the pine trees here, they retain the heat being radiated from the ground. So this area right here is actually a few degrees warmer than being out here in the open, where a lot of the heat being radiated from the ground escapes into the atmosphere. So let's say you have a frost sensitive plant, and let's say you don't want to cover it, or maybe you want to take advantage of the natural microclimates in your area. Then instead of planting your tree over here like I did, because when I planted this tree in the ground I had no idea what I was doing, I would have planted it right over there in between the pine trees. That would have given it a few degrees warmer, and that would have protected it from the frost a lot better naturally, because the canopies of the trees are going to prevent the plant from getting wet in the winter. They are going to block the cold wind as well, and yeah, it would have been a lot better for my plant. So yeah, those are some of the ways you can actually frost protect your plants. One thing you have to keep in mind, guys, some plants as they get older, they will be able to withstand the frost a little better. Another thing to keep in mind is plants are living beings just like you and I, and just like you and I, we're all different. So nobody can actually tell you exactly at what temperature that plant will take damage. Even plants within the same varieties will take damage at different temperatures because they are all different. So as your plant gets older, it will be able to tolerate the frost a little better, but you just won't know until you actually grow the plant and you actually watch it grow and see exactly what it likes and what it doesn't like. If you're growing tropical plants in areas where it gets cold in the winter, you will always have to do this just to be safe. Because let's say you get complacent and you think your plant will be able to tolerate the frost that night, or you don't think you're going to get frost that night, and then you do, everything you work for, you will lose in one single night. And usually it doesn't really matter how big your plant is. Yes, a plant that is fully rooted in the ground will always be stronger than one that is not. So obviously, if you just planted your tree, you will always have to baby it a little more than one that's been in the ground a little longer. But hopefully this helps you out, guys. And then, like I said, if you have any questions, comment below, and I'll see you next time.